Sting's first match in AEW is confirmed, and AEW Dynamite and NXT's ratings are up despite going up against the Inauguration. We talk about that as we review both shows next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. Joining me is Ralph Valenti. Ralph, last night on AEW Dynamite, we saw that Taz issued a challenge to Darby Allin and Sting for a street fight with Team Taz. Darby hinted at it being accepted, but we just learned on Twitter that the match is official at AEW Revolution. Sting and Darby Allin will team against Ricky Starks and Brian Cage at AEW Revolution in a street fight. What are your thoughts on this big news and the return of Sting in competition?
Not surprised. Not surprised. Something we actually predicted on the show. Something that Sting actually said he wanted to do. I guess initially they had reported, or Sting had actually said himself, that while Sting was still under contract with the WWE, he was really pushing to do some type of cinematic matches, mostly against The Undertaker. Obviously, that did not happen. He ended up landing in AEW. So I think it was all but decided that he was going to compete in one way or another. I mean, because let's be honest here, they didn't really sign him with the expectation that he's just going to come out, point his baseball bat at people on a weekly basis, cut promos, have some type of interaction with Darby Allin. At some point, it was inevitable. He had to get physical. He had to work some type of match. This will give them a way to protect Sting, to hide his limitations, which obviously he's 60 plus years old. He's got neck issues, all of that type of stuff. He hasn't wrestled in 4+ years, something like that.
Since 2015? So, 6 years.
Yeah, so 6-7 years, however many years it's been. It's been a while, especially when you're that age. I can't imagine it's going to be easy to jump right back into things if he was going to try and go into work, just your normal traditional style match. Now, like I said, this gives them the opportunity to hide his limitations. And I'm really not that surprised. I think that this was inevitable, and it's something that was predetermined from the get-go for Sting.
Now, I'm interested to see how they pull this off because AEW does not do cinematic matches like WWE has, where it's like an actual movie, where AEW, their parking lot brawl, for example, was just the cars circled around, best friends, Santana and Ortiz just had a fight. That's where I think this is going. And if that's the case, I think that would be more dangerous for Sting and his prior injuries than just having a normal match, because is he going to take a bump on a car? Is he going to do something with, concrete on the street, weapons? That's something to consider here. Or are they going to try to do some weird movie magic so that it looks like he's taking bumps where he's really not? That's an interesting thing to look at here. Yep. They have essentially a month to figure this out. So what do you think they're going to do with this?
Well, I think that if they go the route like the match they had with the Best Friends and Santana Ortiz, if they try to have a match like that where, I think you have a good point there, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to hide those limitations and have him get physical, because I think he'll have to in that type of setting. The one thing they can do, they can try to hide him. They can lock him in like a dumpster. They could put him in a trunk, something like that to buy some time. Eventually, obviously, he'll get out of it. I imagine right now, if I were to guess, I would think Darby and Sting would go over.
Yeah.
But they could find a way to eliminate Sting for a good period of time. Sting could come back, make the save, something like that. My initial thoughts would be that's what they're going to do with this. And I guess to your point about the cinematic style matches, they really haven't done anything like that. They had the Stadium Stampede, which even to that match wasn't necessarily like a, like something you'd see from Matt Hardy or the Deletion series or anything that WWE has done. So going to be interesting to see what route they decide to go with this.
Totally agree. And I'm excited for it. I know a lot of people, they're back and forth on whether or not they want to see Sting in competition again. But you know what? The guy at 62 years old with a bad neck, he's not in terrible shape compared to some other guys at his age. So if you could limit him, I think it could work. But I think the other big news that people are talking about on social media after AEW Dynamite last night is we are getting an eliminator tournament to decide the number one contender for the AEW Women's Championship. And it's quite interesting because you see the graphic that they presented. On one half, they have an 8-woman bracket with the United States flag behind it. And on the other side, it is 8 with the Japanese flag behind it. So does this hint that we're going to get some of those Japanese wrestlers back like Riho? Are they going to recruit some more from like Stardom? Because I know they used to work with them. It's going to be interesting how they play this off. Because honestly, I can't remember 8 Japanese women on the AEW roster.
What was her name? They obviously they had Riho. I'm just trying to think of who they even had under contract, because
they had Yuka Sakazaki.
Yeah, yep.
They had Riho, Aja Kong, but I don't think she really counts because she was more of a 1-off or a 2-off.
Right.
I'm like the number of Japanese women, and Hikaru Shida, obviously, but she's the women's champion. So right. I was thinking, and I put this up on our Twitter, like, yes, the Japanese flag is behind there, but I was thinking, like, I think it's more of an international because you have the likes of Shanna, who's from Portugal. You have Tai Conti from Brazil. Like, I think that's where they should have gone with this, and then have the United States, like North America versus the world. I know the NHL did that years ago in the All-Star game. I think they could have done this with the brackets for the women's division. And I think this is going to help the division in large too.
I would hope so. I think the difficult thing that they're up against is, we always talk about this. If there's one glaring weakness that AEW has, it's the women's division. And it's not like it's bad on a week-to-week basis. It's just they don't focus on it because I just don't know if they're at the level of like some of their competition, Impact, WWE, NXT. And that's not their fault. It's just, they're behind the 8 ball because the other companies had a head start. They were in existence before AEW. So it kind of leaves you thinking, well, who's going to be in this? What's the quality of the match going to be? Chris Statlander, I don't know where she's at with her rehab, but I think she'll be coming back soon. We might see her in this.
I think she's going to miss the tournament. From what I saw, I think she still is a little behind on her rehab, so she might miss this tournament and won't be back until the summer. So it's going to be a while for her, but you look at the 8 that they could put in there. Obviously, the 5 that are ranked. You have also Tai Conti, like I said, if she's going to be put in either bracket. Layla Hirsch, who had a very good match last night against Penelope Ford. You could throw her into the argument. Red Velvet. There's a few people they could throw in there. Even some people that we're not even hearing about could potentially be in there as well. So maybe a surprise. I know some people said maybe some people from Impact, maybe Jordan Grace or Deonna Purrazzo can make an appearance in the tournament.
I would not be surprised given the fact that we're continuing to see, whether it's Matt Hardy going to Impact, the Good Brothers on Dynamite on a weekly basis now, or the past couple of weeks, I should say. So wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it would make a whole lot of sense if they're going to get any talent from Impact Wrestling. Why not take or borrow some of the talent from the women's division, which is, pretty notable from what most fans would say.
I wouldn't be like, if it were me, I would have done an Impact bracket and I would have done an AEW bracket and just go from there, because Impact can give you 8 women and even have the Impact champion or someone from Impact challenge Hikaru Shida. I think that would still put out a good match, but who knows? We'll see. We'll see where the brackets fill out, but one bracket that we definitely know is filled out and already seeing in progression is the Dusty Rhodes Classic. We saw a couple of the men's matches last week. Continue it this week. Also, the women's Dusty Rhodes Classic started last night. And I got to admit, I think all 3 matches that we saw from both the men and the women were upsets. Kushida and Leon Ruff beat the way, Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory. We also saw Lucha House Party beat Imperium. And I think the biggest upset of the night in the women's, the first match, Casey Cannizzaro and Kaden Carter beat Mercedes Martinez and Toni Storm. Yes, with the help of Io Shirai. But Ralph, out of these 3 matches, which of them are you most surprised ended up the way it did?
I'm probably going to pick between the way and Martinez and Toni Storm losing. I would say the women's match.
Yeah.
That was certainly surprising to me. I mean, granted, yes, there was some outside involvement, but I think that match certainly was a surprise to me. I gotta say, and you touched on this last week, I can't get into the new Johnny Gargano in that group.
No.
I just can't. I can't stand them. And it's not even like snarky heel like they're supposed to get heat or anything like that. When they're on the TV, I don't want to see them. That's
No,
my opinion. But
I agree. Like it's not working. And some people might love this new Johnny Gargano. He's working a heel. He's been a babyface this whole time. I just can't get into it.
me
The
either. Not at
original
all.
heel Johnny Gargano was good, but this heel Johnny Gargano, it's
Not so much.
not so much. But I got to admit, like from what I've seen from Casey Cannizzaro and Caden Carter in like the limited time they've been on TV, I've been impressed. They obviously have chemistry together. And I would not be shocked at this point, now that they already won this first match against Storm and Martinez, that they win the whole damn thing. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, definitely surprising that they advanced. Lucha's house party, that kind of came from out of nowhere. I mean,
it makes sense though, because now they're facing Legado del Fantasma, and they've been kind of feuding for the last couple of weeks with Grand Metalik challenging for the Cruiserweight Championship a couple weeks ago. So it kind of makes sense now that it happened, but still, like, Lucha House Party, even on the main roster, they're an afterthought. They're never used anywhere.
No.
And now they beat Imperium, which is one of the top tag teams in the division for NXT. And that one was a head scratcher, but after seeing what happens later on in the night, it makes a lot of sense.
yeah, it does. I mean, I don't know. I guess we're gonna have to see what happens next week and what tag teams advance. But the matches themselves last night on NXT, I thought were mostly good. Just again, like we talk about all the time, hard to get interested in some of the teams and some of the matches that were going on.
Yeah, well, one match that I think a lot of people were interested in, and I thought it delivered, was the Fight Pit.
Yeah.
Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa, I thought, had a very good main event, a very creative way that it ended, where Tommaso Ciampa was shoved into the corner of the cage, and Timothy Thatcher did like a muffler over his neck it was a very unique way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Got the submission. And I don't know if you saw this on social media earlier today, but It looks like they're going to take the vacant spot that has been given in the Dusty Road Classic because of the injuries from Ashanti Theodonis from Karrion Kross earlier in the night. Do you think now that they're a tag team putting into this tournament, could they make a run in the Dusty Rhodes Classic?
Definitely. And I think then not only that, but first of all, do you remember about a month ago, I actually predicted that was going to happen? I said that they were going to enter the Dusty Classic. So that certainly seems like it is something that's going to happen. Not only do I see them going on and potentially winning it, the only other outcome I could see is they make it to the finals and they advance their feud because, one of them knocks the other guy over and costs them the match and whatever the case may be. But no, I definitely see them going into the tournament, going far, at least going to the finals and either winning the whole thing or losing in the finals.
Yeah, I know in the first round, if they take that spot, they're going to be going against Daivari and Tony Nese, which they should win that one. After that, they face the Undisputed Era. And then after that, they face the winner of Kushida and Ruff and the Grizzled Young Veterans. So they do have a very tough road if they do end up entering the Dusty Road Classic and actually making it. So, and I think, honestly, I like the Grizzled Young Veterans this year in the Dusty Road Classic.
They're very good. They are one of those teams that is very gritty, stiff working, confident for sure. And once you get through some of the tag teams that are kind of there just as fillers, I think that's when things are going to start to get interesting, whether it's Thatcher and Ciampa, Undisputed Era, Grizzled Young Veterans. So I'm definitely looking forward to the latter part of this tournament. Maybe not so much the preliminary part of it.
No, maybe not. But as it progresses, I think it's definitely going to get more intriguing and see how the storylines interweave with each other. But AEW Dynamite NXT, there were some highlights. There were some criticisms we could definitely throw out there. So let's start on the positive side, Ralph. What were some highlights from last night that you saw from either show?
Well, other than the Fight Pit, I thought the Fight Pit was certainly very good. I thought that delivered. That would probably be the match that I enjoyed the most from the two shows. So that's certainly one of them. I think Karrion Kross continuing to look dominant, look like one of the top guys in NXT. Glad to see him back. Other than that, I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit about some lowlights. Those would be probably my only two good takeaways from last night from both shows.
Even AEW Dynamite, you don't even have a highlight from them?
I had a match that I was really looking forward to, but it didn't necessarily deliver at any level. I didn't think Dynamite was good last night. I really had a hard time getting into the show. I really had a hard time getting into some of the matches that they had, just because, usually there's one match that you're really looking forward to. And granted, there was a match I was looking forward to, but I don't think it delivered. I guess the only thing that came out of last night that I was happy about from Dynamite is the fact that we're going to get to see Archer and Eddie Kingston. So if that's what you want me to say as my highlight, that would be it. I really did not think Dynamite was good last night.
If you had to, if I had a highlight, and I think I do, out of this show, I agree with you. I think it was a little bit of a downer compared to other weeks, but from the little bit that we saw in the Jon Moxley match, I was impressed by Nick Camarado. That guy has a very unique build. He looked good in his time. He made you think like, oh my God, he can actually beat Jon Moxley. Like, although we all knew it wasn't going to happen, but there was that moment where like, this guy is really beating him down. And Moxley, the way he like slipped out of that press into the sleeper hold to win the match, I thought it was really good. And the promo afterwards from Moxley was very good, giving you a hint. Okay, I'm talking to Omega, but for those that understand his stuff in New Japan, he's also talking to Kenta too, either having that match in the LA dojo or doing something on AEW Dynamite with Kenta for that IWGP US title. So I like that. And I did like the Layla Hirsch versus Penelope Ford match. But as far as criticisms go, Ralph, can I just say in general, like the matches on AEW Dynamite was I could criticize all of them. I don't think any of the matches last night, other than the two that I mentioned, were very good.
Well, they were difficult to get into, right? So you had Cody versus Pretty Peter Avalon. Is that what they call him now? So
That's
he's no
what
longer
they call
the
him now,
librarian.
yes.
So he's like a knockoff Ravishing Rick Rude, Rick Martel. I mean, that's what I took from it with a
it's
creepy
the Wish
mustache.
version. It's the Wish version of Rick Rude and Rick Martel.
Whatever you want to call it. I mean, the Dark Order match, I'm sure some people were going to be into the match itself. That was okay, not necessarily my style. Honestly, the match that I was looking forward to was the main event.
Yeah,
I was interested to see where that match was going to go. I think that match was terrible. I thought it was spotty. I thought there were parts where it was certainly overly choreographed, especially with Proud and Powerful, Santana Ortiz. They looked overly choreographed in many spots throughout it. So many botches. Chris Jericho, and look, I'm not going to body shame the guy, but I will say this. He is getting paid a lot of money to be a professional athlete in the number 2 promotion in the United States. I think we could all kind of admit that.
Yes.
Last night, I saw a Chris Jericho for the first time where it was glaring to me, something's off. And I don't know if it was the chemistry or if he truly is getting out of shape or he's not in ring shape. I mean, he couldn't even perform his finish. I've seen him screw up the Lion Salt before.
Yeah.
But that's when he slips off. I mean, he looked so off in this match. It looked terrible. Sammy Guevara did a standing shooting star press. He practically missed the guy. Another thing I didn't like about this. So last week, I believe it was, we got Hager and Wardlow, right?
Yep.
Wouldn't you think they could hold off on that, put those two on opposite teams in this match, have them square off and give you a little bit of a tease in this match where they square off and then progress that storyline? Now it's kind of we've already seen the match. The only guy that came out of that match I felt like looked good. I thought Hager looked good in the match. I thought he looked good, but everybody else, I don't think that match did justice for anybody. I don't think it did anything good for anybody coming out of that match. I thought that match was really spotty and a real bad reflection on a lot of the top guys in AEW right now.
I think the biggest thing out of all this is the fact that Santana and Ortiz did not win.
That's the other thing. I was shocked because I thought this was going to be the opportunity where they don't necessarily have to leave the inner circle, but show that they should be taken seriously. And I didn't get that from this match. I thought I was going to. Like I said, I felt like Hager was the one that looked the strongest out of the whole thing.
Now, I will say, because we say this all the time with WWE, let the story develop. So I will say it with this. Perhaps the loss with Santana and Ortiz starts the story of them leaving the inner circle because they know the inner circle is holding them back. And then we get them as the tag team that they need to be.
Yeah.
I mean, they were ranked heading into this match. They were the number 5 team in the tag team division. So obviously I think there's a plan there, but now that MJF and Chris Jericho won, I'm sure they'll flip-flop that next week, but I think this will eventually progress the storyline. But like I said, that match, I agree with you, was not very good. And on NXT, like if there's any criticism that I could put there, I know you said you like the Karrion Kross thing. I would disagree. I was not a fan of that. We've seen it so much. Like, does he really need to squash a cruiserweight in 3 minutes? Like at this point, like at least if you're going to showcase him, at least have him go against someone a little bit more than Ashanti Adonis. That would just be me personally, but understanding that they probably did that just to write off that team to put Ciampa and Thatcher in. Right. I can't totally knock it, but again, not a big fan. But after all is said and done, the ratings are in, according to PW Torch, AEW Dynamite and NXT both went up this week. Dynamite went from a 0.30 last week to a 0.36 in the 18 to 49 demographic, also gaining nearly 100,000 total viewers, going to 854,000 total viewers this week. NXT going over 100,000 total viewers this week with 659,000. Also a slight increase in the 18 to 49 rating with a 0.15 from last week's 0.14. After the ratings, all our criticisms, highlights, news to talk about, Ralph, which show did you think was better this week?
Could I say a draw? I don't know.
You can.
This was the first week really where I really came away from it saying one didn't stand out for good reasons. I think they both stood out for bad reasons. I'll say NXT only because I thought the in-ring action was better. Dynamite really just had an off week.
They did.
That's what I'll say. And the main event did not deliver, in my opinion. So I'm going to say NXT was better.
Yeah, I feel like this week AEW Dynamite took a knee because of the inauguration. They felt like maybe the ratings were going to go down. Not as many people were watching. So maybe they took a knee or punted and ended up the ratings went up. So maybe that was a shot in the foot for them. But NXT, I'm going to be interested to see how their ratings look next week because I thought that was the better show this week. And we'll see. I think they did a little bit better with their storyline progression, especially with Finn Balor and the Undisputed Era and that whole ordeal. Dusty Road Classic, I think all those matches delivered. So we'll see where it goes with Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher too. So I think this week I have that. I want to see what happens next week from NXT more than I have from AEW Dynamite. So I think you're calling it a draw. I'll go with the slight edge to AEW or to, NXT.
Initially I said draw, but if I had to pick, I would say NXT because I thought the in-ring work was just better.
All right. And I know on our community page, they went, I think like 80% AEW Dynamite. So I'm sure people will comment in the comments below why you thought AEW Dynamite was better than NXT this week. Let us know. We love to have the conversation. Don't forget to share us all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble.